Today on Quest, Doctor of Divinity Erin Fall Haskell. Life is a quest for logic and reason. It is a quest to find balance between science and faith. Life is a quest for knowledge and understanding. But most importantly, it's a quest for personal discovery. Whatever your quest, knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. Welcome to Quest. Hello everyone, I'm your host, Todd Fischer, and this is Quest. For those of you that might be new listeners, let me tell you a little about me. I'm the founder of Metatomics and the author of the best-selling book, Metatomics, The Grand Design. I'm a philosopher, a theorist, a metaphysicist. I'm a perpetual pupil of theology, and I'm an expert in comparative religious study. I've also extensively researched the mind-body connection, anatomy, and physiology. I documented over 300 case studies while researching my book, all from a scientific perspective, with cases that ranged from near-death and out-of-body experiences to possession to past life experiences, as well as the metaphysical, the paranormal, and other unexplained cases of a spiritual nature. This podcast will bring you some of those astonishing stories, and in some cases by the people that actually lived them. From time to time, I'll be talking about important, perhaps even controversial issues from both spiritual and scientific points of view. The world we live in is ever-changing, and there's often a conflict between spirituality and science, and I wanted to bring you this podcast to balance that equation. It will show you how we know what we know, and there's still so much we don't know. For me, curiosity is part of what makes us human. It's the joy of discovery. It's what drives us. It's our quest. Today my guest is Dr. Erin Fall Haskell. She is a Doctor of Divinity, founder of Soulciete. She is a New Thought minister, best-selling author, international speaker, and self-made millionaire. Forbes featured her in the 11 most inspirational female entrepreneurs to follow on Instagram. She is the author of Awakening, a 40-day guide to unleashing your spiritual powers, life's purpose, and manifesting your dreams. I think you'll really enjoy this interview. Hi, Erin. Welcome to the podcast.
Oh my gosh, Todd, I'm so excited to dive into a conscious spiritual conversation with you. You are so amazing. I'm so impressed with all your research around spirituality and science and everything. So you have my favorite conversation here.
Perfect. Well, let's get into it. Erin, tell me a little about your background. Did you grow up spiritual or religious? How did you get to where you are today?
Oh my gosh, not at all. I actually grew up in a kind of a pseudo hippie commune in the hills of Santa Barbara. It was called Painted Cave because it was next to some of the indigenous Indian caves. And my mother and father got divorced when I was very young, like under 2 years old. And so my dad went off to go find himself. He actually joined like a cult. And my mom was she kind of became anti-spirituality, anti-religion, anti-everything. And there was just no rhyme, no order. It was in the hills of Santa Barbara. And most of the parents and stuff, it was kind of like leftover residuals of the 60s. And so it was very chaotic. It wasn't exactly a hippie commune per se, but back in the day, I mean, we didn't have cell phones. There was, one channel on the TV that came in for a couple shows in the whole week. We just ran around barefoot, literally, and the doors were open at our home and we come in and out. But I was that little girl, I was just confused. I remember my mom telling me that I came home the first day from school and she said, I came in the front door and I said, Mom, how old do you have to be to quit school? And she went, oh no, so I was always kind of a little bit of a rebellion. I was kind of not a rebellion, but always questioning everything. None of it made sense. School didn't make sense to me. How the parents were acting didn't make sense. None of it added up. And so I just kind of was always feeling like I didn't feel like I really belonged on this planet the whole time. And then as we actually moved down to Santa Barbara into the city when I was in junior high, which is a total disaster. My mom kind of started drinking a lot. She was gone a lot. And we were kind of like latchkey kids. And then I remember getting date raped in high school, and then I became bulimic from 17 to 20. And I was just trying to find myself.
Oh, wow. That's incredible. Like, what a story. And the whole time you didn't really have like, you didn't really know much about like anything about Christianity or, you know, what your feelings on God, were they there or not? Like, you must have at least had peers that,
Yeah, so I had two girlfriends I grew up with, and their parents, it was so funny. Their parents, their dad became an alcoholic, and their mom became a fanatical spiritualist, if you will. So they decided to separate, but they decided to not stand in the same roof for the kids. They want to stand in the same roof for the kids. So the mom moved into the living room, and she painted the entire living room purple. And then the dad would get completely smashed off vodka every night and pass out in the room on the other side of the house. So that was the only experience I'd ever had of what spirituality or religion was.
Wow. And what was the catalyst that started to move you that way? I know you refer to yourself, you were spiritually broke. Tell me that.
Yeah. So what happened actually was when I was 22, I had gotten married because I thought, well, that will solve all my problems. And I didn't even know him. I definitely was not in love with him, but we got pregnant. And so I was full-term pregnant, and I had worked my way into to nursing school. And one day my baby stopped moving inside of me, and I basically had read that if your baby stops moving, you should go get it checked out. So I basically went into the doctor's office and found out that I had to go in for a stillborn, to birth my dead baby, basically. So they're like, well, you can either go home or you can go into labor. We can induce you. And I was thinking, wait, my baby's died and I have to now go into full labor. So of course I went into labor. And at that point in time, they want you to grieve your baby. So they have you bathe your dead baby, take pictures of your dead baby, and then go home without your dead baby. So the next day I woke up, my parents weren't there. No one was around, because don't ask me why. And I actually went back to the mortician's house alone without my husband, who I didn't know at all. And I thought, I'm going to take some more pictures with my baby, because I didn't have the right clothing that I wanted to take. I was a little cuckoo, a little out of it, clearly. And the mortician just said, oh, sweetheart, your baby's been in formaldehyde for 24 hours. So you can take as much time as you need to grieve, so he set up this room, and I went down into this dark, cold room in the basement with red. It was literally a scene out of the movie. And in the middle of this big room was a hospital bed. And I kind of dropped the bag of clothes, thinking, okay, I'm not gonna be taking pictures. The mortician closed the door behind me, and I was in this dark room as alone you could ever be. And I just cried and I cried, and I felt so alone. I had that lump in my throat. And I just thought, if there is a God, how could God be so cruel? How could life be so cruel? And I just was crying and looking at his, body that was just not even, there was obviously zero life. And I recognized in that moment, I was like, my baby's gone, his body's here, we're not these bodies. And it just hit me like a ton of bricks, and I committed. And as we know, it all comes down to decision and mind. And I decided in that moment that I was going to dedicate my life to figuring out what the hell we were doing here, what is my spiritual nature, and what's really going on. And so that was 25 years ago. And it's been an incredible journey of discovering truth. And there is truth. And I went through every modality, everything from 9 rites and shamanism to leadership programs to subconscious work to Greek oracle processes to you name it, Kundalini yoga. And I really discovered the new thought movement genre, which is metaphysics, which is understanding universal law, which is understanding how we're manifesting and how our subconscious mind comes through the soul of the DNA of this body, and how it expresses through that, and how we are really here to evolve and express the DNA at the highest form. And it's been an incredible journey to becoming a doctor of divinity. So that's my story.
Yeah. I think I remember reading somewhere that you kind of referred to yourself at 22 years old as spiritually broke. Okay. And I thought that was a really interesting term to use. Like, what a terrible, traumatic thing, but it actually birthed something completely different in you, which is what's interesting about it. Let's talk about how do you define the entrepreneur life versus the spiritual life? Because I know this is something that you really get into in your world. So define that for my listeners.
Sure. So what happened after that? After I had the stillborn, I was like, okay, I was financially and spiritually broke at that point in time. And I decided I was going to become I decided I wanted to become a millionaire, and I decided I wanted to become spiritually, whatever, awoke, what we say today, right? So what happened is I ended up having kind of a double life. And in one of my life, I would do all my spiritual work. I literally would be in my closet. I had a little closet that I put my meditation room in, and I would do all my work, and I go to classes, I'd read books, I'd meditate, I'd do all the stuff. And on the other side of my world, I would do all my entrepreneurship. I actually started saving up money. I waited tables. I saved up a few grand to be able to put down on basically a total starter, slumlord home back in the day. And I began to fix up homes on one side of my life and become an entrepreneur. And then I had my spiritual world. And what happened is the gap became bigger, and I began to realize that I wasn't happy in my entrepreneurial world. I wanted to do only the spiritual world. But what I decided was I could merge them together, because I loved the conversation of entrepreneurship and I loved the conversation of spirituality. And what I realized is those are my people. I was like, these are the people I love, my girlfriends and guy friends that are really deep in their spirituality, but they're innovating and they're creating conscious, different commerce and creating community and doing their coaching work and doing all that stuff. And so for me, entrepreneurship is really expression of the soul. Business development is the same as spiritual development. For me, I don't see any difference at all. It is my daily spiritual practice. It develops me. It helps me. It demands me to get my mind right. It demands me to live on spiritual principle and not make people wrong, find our commonalities, build team, build tribe, synergize and all that stuff. So I think that it's all one thing.
And you kind of probably coined the phrase spiritual entrepreneur, because I had never heard it before until you. But what are the types of spiritual entrepreneurs?
Yeah, we just came out with a fun quiz, which is interesting, because after working with hundreds of thousands of people we touched through online, and then thousands of people I've worked with through different groups and through obviously through my own Soulciete and New Thought Global. But what is a spiritual entrepreneur? What I found is that there's different types, in that there's some people that just really love the lifestyle of it. They love to have trinkets. They love to have crystals. They love to have services. We have real estate agents that are spiritually based. We have all kinds of different things. So I consider those soulpreneurs. They live from the soul. They live on spiritual principle, but they literally are coming out with products and services. They're really based in wanting to bring the lifestyle into it, bring it into the world, right? The next type we have is what I would call a spiritual coach. It's anybody that is really into transformation, into breakthroughs, into helping people wake up, basically. We could say it's the healers, the light workers, the coaches. We train and certify spiritual coaches, so that's our kind of label for it. The next is spiritual practitioners. And spiritual practitioners is a genre that basically is diving into how do we have that transformation? How are we manifesting? What is the law? How is the subconscious connected with the subjective mind? How are we connected as oneness in the metaphysics? So that's really diving into and holding truth at such a level, because it's such a profound, logical and spiritual and practical way. The next is a New Thought minister. And you could call them the speakers, the people that want to be out teaching. They're the teachers. They want to be on stage. They want to be the public figures. They want to preach. They want to bring it across, through inspiration to the masses, if you will.
Right.
And then lastly is what we call Doctor Divinity. And who are those type of people? Those are the people who are researchers. Those are probably someone like you that's bringing kind of new modalities, new information, and packaging it in new ways, bringing forward the entire industry. Because what you do is in your doctorate is you actually bring something, you birth something to the world, whether it be a book or a program or something that is kind of groundbreaking. For example, I created the E4 trauma method, and that is out of my doctorate. That's what something is birthed to the world that will be a stamp on the industry that is making a big imprint on the industry. So those are the 5 types: a soulpreneur, a spiritual coach, which you could categorize that as light workers or people that are really doing that inner work. Next is spiritual practitioners that really, really understand it. They live it and breathe it at such a profound level. And then next is New Thought ministers we have, and then doctors of divinity.
Yeah, that's great. When I saw you put that across your Instagram, you put the quiz across, and I was like, this is brilliant. Like, I've never really seen that broken down like that, but it makes perfect sense how you've categorized it all. And would you say that these types of spiritual entrepreneurs, is this something based in what we know as traditional religion, or are these different types of spiritual practices? Is it a combination of all of that?
Well, we teach specifically New Thought movement, which is it's a culmination of philosophy, science, and religion. And we find the commonalities in all of it, which we consider truth, which is things like Christian mysticism, which is not putting God outside of the self or not putting Jesus as the exception. He was an example of who we already are. We are Christ conscious. We are that, right? We refer to things like epigenetics in science, where we recognize that there's a lineage. So whether you want to call it past lives or whether you want to call it our lineage of our DNA, that there's memory that lives in us. And as we do our spiritual work, we're here to neutralize our trauma and really become turning on our greatest version of ourselves. Philosophy, of course, where we deal with all the great minds, Emerson and all the great philosophers, bringing it all together to teach what really, if you start looking at all of it, it's all saying the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. That's interesting. That's all very interesting to me. I certainly, with the world I've created, is really fits into this, what you're talking about.
Because
You've built, let's talk about Soulciete for a second. Tell me about that.
So I'm the founder of Soulciete, which is also New Thought Global now. So we are kind of affiliated with 1,500 centers, which I just got the Walden Wisdom Award, which is 3 to 5 people get that a year. Greg Braden's gotten it, Oprah Winfrey's gotten it, things like that. So we are really a community that is committed to spiritual community, but also committed to enlightenment, empowerment, and entrepreneurship. We truly believe that when somebody awakens, they have a gift and message to bring to the world. And we also believe that, as even like the Dalai Lama said, that it really is the Western kind of, he said women, but I think he really meant was the entrepreneurs and the people that are really moving forward, bringing it into individual expressions. Because one person's going to really resonate with your work, some person's going to resonate with my work, some person's going to resonate with Greg Braden's work, because we're all really saying the same thing. It's just that it needs to be brought out in so many expressions, because we have little communities are popping up more and more, instead of one big church, that may not work for everybody.
Right.
Take it to individual communities so people can really thrive in like-minded communities.
And how does one join Soulciete? What's the process of this? Is this a website? Is this is this community?
We have a lot of free stuff, of course. We do 5-day challenges, which are super fun and engaging and give actually really tangible takeaways for their inner work and for their building their businesses online. We have a leadership program, which is kind of our signature, which is a 12-week program to launch your soul-based business online. Then we do have the spiritual coaching program, certification program, the spiritual practitioner program, and next year we're launching the ministry program. So anyone can join. We're just spiritually based. We have all different types. We have people, again, we have real estate agents. We have, of course, spiritual coaches. We have people that just want to be in the community because they absolutely need to just do their inner work and their trauma work, and they want to birth their purpose, and they want to just get their mind right.
Sure. And Soulciete is a website, and people can sign up on the website for this.
Yeah, or any of the social media. If you look up drerin.tv, DRERIN.tv, all the usually, if you go to anyone's social media out there, you can usually just click their bio link or go into about, and usually people have links for free gifts for the next, different events they're doing, for their programs, and so on and so forth. So yeah, you could go to soulciete.com, or you could go to my social media, drerin.tv.
Sure. Is it a community where you can meet other people?
Oh yeah, we have. I would say that was actually the biggest surprise for me, and kind of the biggest blessing out of all of it, meaning that when I designed this, my intention was to really transform people's lives and give them tools that could help them heal and awaken and become great leaders and entrepreneurs. But I didn't realize how strong, in fact, I would say our greatest asset is the community and the relationships that the girls and a few guys, there's mostly women, and how much they have. I mean, I get pictures where they tag me on social media where they're meeting up. The girls from the West Coast have flown over to actually stay with another gal over on the East Coast, and they're literally having their vacations together and things. Like
Wow.
it's a very tight community.
That's great. That's great. Do you so this year has been kind of pretty much the most messed up year we've had in a long time. And do you think that in something as turbulent as what 2020 has been, do you think more people are looking for religion and spirituality in a year like this? Or do you think people lose faith when so many bad things happen at once?
It's a great question. We've doubled at least the business this year. And I think that, yes, like years like 2008 and 2020, I think that what happens, as we know, is it's relative. Is it the worst year or is it the best year? Because what happens is we are shifting. It's like birthing something new. And it's always great when you realize how none of this, we don't get to take any of it, when all of our material things, all of our status, all this stuff, it doesn't mean anything. So when all of that kind of crumbles before your eyes, you're left with just what really matters and truth. And so people begin to, their values shift back to what really matters to them. And generally that is, people that they love, and they want to discover themselves. They want to do their healing work, and they want to, have purpose in life. So yes, I think that absolutely it has people come more to religion, to different philosophies, to whatever it is. I would imagine that everyone I've talked to that does self-development, all their businesses have boomed this year. Every last one of them.
Well, yeah, for sure. I agree with all that. That's my thinking on this. My fear is that when the world returns to normal, people will get away from, searching inward or looking for what's important to them, because you start to get back into the day-to-day grind. And I feel like, what you've built with Soulciete and what other people are doing, that, there's a certain amount of discipline you have to put into this practice. And I think even like during lockdown, pretty much everyone took free yoga classes because everyone was teaching online, like doing Zoom classes. And it's like people get it, but then 6 months from now, everyone's back to work and you can go to concerts again. And then you get away from it all. And I think that's something we really have to stress to people, that, this isn't like a Band-Aid fix. This can be a practice for your life. This can be an activity for the rest of your life, and to stick with it. And I think there's good and decent things that can come from that. So that's my only fear coming out of times like this, is that people will eventually just move away from it. Do you feel that?
I mean, I think that it's like anything in life. The reality is that there's only going to be a very small percentage that actually makes an impact. And we know that we're immortal and we are eternal, but in the form aspect, we're not. And so that's why it's so important to leave a legacy. I recognize that as I transition from this lifetime, I go back to the oneness that I always am. But as far as this lifetime, I only get one shot in leaving my legacy in this lifetime. So it's very important for me to do the work I'm doing. And look, we're in a relative world. There's lots of people that just won't do their deep work, and they're going to fall into the masses. And so it's really up to us to, I don't look at it like it's good or bad that they're doing that. It's just human nature. And majority of people are going to, live in somewhat of a hell because they haven't hit a low enough to discipline their mind. And it just is what it is. You know what I mean?
Right. Oh, for sure. For sure. Mm-hmm. So you put a book out. Tell me about your book.
Oh yeah. My book, Awakening. It's a 40-day guide. And it's been really fascinating because I'll never forget, I was at a spiritual center years ago, and there was this minister. She was she's this most beautiful Reverend Nancy, and she's something like 80 years old, and she's the most radiant woman you'll ever meet. She walks in the room and she smiles and the whole world lights up. And she was giving this talk one day, and she was talking about, she asked a question at the end of her talk, and she said, what is the one thing that if you did it, you would know that you could do anything in your life? And for me, I was like, damn it, I know exactly what it is. It's a book. Because I'd been working on I'd taken notes from all the years and years and years of my transformation, big distinctions that really were profound stories that were distinctions of awakening. And when she said that, I went, oh no. So I had to write my book. So if you're out there, I think about 78% of all people desire to write a book.
Yeah.
And my invitation for anyone listening right now is to put a deadline on it, because you can write a book for the rest of your life. You can always edit a little bit more. You can add
That's
a little
true.
more.
Yeah.
You'll never be done. You will never be done. So you have to put a deadline on it. And it's one of the things we do in the community also, because there's a lot of women that write books also. And you've got to put a deadline on it. And so the book for me it was like torture, Todd. It was like, I couldn't figure out why it was so hard. Like I was writing the book and then I had one editor and then it didn't work. And then I had another editor. And then when it finally came out, there's like edits still in it. And I was like, I called up a girlfriend. I was like, why? I've paid for 2 editors and there's still edits in it. She goes, Erin, I was published by Hay House and there was duplicate paragraphs in my book. So of course the edits are all fixed now, but it was like, it seemed like the hardest thing in the world to do, to put out a book, but the book's done extremely well. It went viral over in UK. And I'm really happy of how I wrote it, because it's a 40 guide. So it actually has 40 guided meditations that come with it. There's kind of a worksheet that goes with each of the 40 days. It's very interactive, and it's been a great marketing tool also, because people engage with you, right? So if they get your book, like your book, I'm sure it's like they're in relationship with you. Talk about leaving a legacy. Like you're in someone's life. You know what I mean? For 40 days, like that's a lot, you know?
Yeah, yeah. I know for me, it's funny you said that. I was laughing in my mind about my own deadlines for my book. So my issue with it was putting a deadline on the science part of it, because it was always so open-ended. I was like, I've got to finally put things down on paper. Like I've researched this and science this as much as I probably need to for this. Now let's just stop and start writing things and see what this takes on. And then I wrote and kept adding chapters. That's all.
Oh my gosh.
And then I get to 1,000 pages and I'm like, you know what? This has got to be my deadline. Like this is, I just got to stop right now. And then I had to cut the book down substantially when it was published. So that's how my deadlines came to be. I had written many screenplays and teleplays and other things before that, but I had never gone into a long form book. So that was certainly, deadlines were certainly an issue. But they kind of
book, right? And it goes out to the world, and even it profoundly impacts one person. How cool is that?
Yeah, it was interesting. I was doing a book tour before COVID, so it all just sort of like ended abruptly in March. So it was really interesting because my book numbers were increasing. So they said, let's take you to Barnes & Noble and you can meet your fans. Because that's the thing about books, is the publishers don't know what the demographics are. They don't have any idea. So they send authors on book tours so you can see who's actually buying your book. And it was fascinating to me to see the demographics of people that were wanting to buy it and talk to me. And it was really neat. And although I only got to get into a certain amount of states before the COVID shut it all down, it was really interesting to see that. And that's a very valuable thing for an author too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What were most people in the stores buying them? Because I don't even know if people buy books anymore in the stores, right?
They do. They still come out, and because everything I did was Barnes and Noble. That's all I did was the Barnes and Nobles. I didn't get a chance to go to any other types of bookstores, and those stores are huge. People like to go there, and there's coffee shops in them, and people, it's a community, so they're a little different. But a lot of people just buy on Amazon. I hardly get any Amazon sales. I do get sales through Barnes and Noble, but like I'm buried in Amazon. There's just too many other things people buy, and I seldom get sales there. So I get sales through my website, and I get them through the Barnes and Noble website. Spiritual books sell really well through Barnes and Noble's website. And I tend to get a lot of sales through there. And I would sell a lot when I would do appearances. And I think part of the reasons people like autographed copies, they like to meet the author, they like to ask questions. And my book wasn't made for me to do a reading, because it would be rather kind of boring for me to, it's not like I'm reading Harry Potter and it's something like, action packed. But I will do a Q&A. So people will stay around and I can answer questions for people. And I do like to do that. But yeah, it was really interesting. And like you, I have more female buyers of my book than male buyers of my book. And it's been really interesting because there's been a swath of, 18 to 80-year-old women of all ethnicities that purchase my book. But when it comes to males, they're typically kind of the over 40 male that's like the conspiracy theory nerdy type guy. Like that's what I get in terms of like my male viewers. So I hope I'm not insulting anyone on my own podcast that bought my book, but that's kind of the demographic of it. Like I don't get young males that are interested in spiritual guides, really. So
well, that's not the demographic anyway. Like all spiritual work, I would imagine it's I think it's 80% women.
Yeah, and it's for me, I look at it as an interesting challenge. Like with where I go next with my next few books is how do I now start to steer my book to reach the demographic I'm not getting? And I think that for me, anyways, as an author, is the challenge.
Well, I think it's actually opposite the more you niche it down. I think it depends if you want to. Obviously, from an entrepreneur perspective, you have to look at what's the goal of the book. And yes, if it's for kind of the masses, then yes, you want to reach all those. But if you're looking to monetize, most people don't make much money off their book. They make money off of the events and retreats and courses that come off the back of the book. And you want to niche it down as much as possible. So
Sure.
for you, it depends on what the goal is.
Will you be doing another book?
Oh, I have many, many more books in me, but we've been so busy, Todd, that it's like, I don't even know how I'm doing everything I'm doing. So the last thing I can do right now is write a book. I've thought about taking on co-authors, but every time we start going down the track, I'm like, I just have to be in my own voice. Mm-hmm.
You have a 5-day spiritual entrepreneur challenge coming up. Is that right?
Yeah, there's so much fun.
Mm-hmm. When is that? And tell everyone about it.
Sure. It starts November 30th, which is a Monday. And it's so much fun. You can't believe it. It's bizarre. These 5-day challenges, people get so into it. And I'm going to teach you how to get really clear of your mission, your message and your mission the first day, and the formula of how to figure it out, because it's actually based off your trauma and based off the hardest thing you've ever gone through in your life, your purpose. The second day, we get into pricing your products, because it's confusing. Like people want their products, or they want a coach, or they want to do it, but how do I price it out? What do I make my package and all that good stuff? And then day 3, we get into selling with soul, because I used to hate sales. I thought it was creepy, manipulating. And there's an entire transformation in mind that happens where we start serving our clients and getting them committed to their own dreams instead of trying to get something from our clients. And then day 4, we get into mastering social media. So Forbes nominated me 11 of the most inspirational female entrepreneurs to watch on Instagram. So I'm actually going to train the 10 things to post and why to get people, basically having them trust you and like you and actually want to do business with you. And then day 5, which is actually the following Monday, it's a big masterclass. We get into 10xing your business and kind of the formula for 10xing scaling online. So it's very exciting. Yeah, we do it all on like a Facebook group. And a lot of people don't like Facebook anymore, but it's really actually good because everybody's there anyway, and it gets really engaged, and people have a lot of community with it also. And we've had so many miracles happen during the 5-day challenge. So it's a lot of work, but it's so rewarding to watch the breakthroughs and the transformation and watch people actually make money. Like they actually start monetizing that week. They get their first client or their first whatever. And that's what we're here to do, because it's like breaking through that first client. It's the hardest one. And then you're like, okay, I can do this.
For such a busy professional woman that you are, what is your daily spiritual practice? What do you do? What can you tell people the secret to your success is? Do you meditate? Do you do yoga in the morning? How many breaks do you need to take throughout the day? What's your secret sauce here?
A great question. It's changed so much. I used to be very disorganized. You'd be like, what? Like I literally could not see a project through. I would start things, I would stop things, I would be overwhelmed. I was confused. I would get sad a lot. I was emotional. I was up and down throughout the month. Like who I am today is, you wouldn't even recognize me as a woman, say, 20 years ago. I was not even the same human being, quite frankly. And so today, obviously, my daily spiritual practice has evolved over time. I used to spend many hours in spiritual practice, meditating and doing my work. And today I don't as much. I meditate usually some point in time in the day. I do some breath work. But for me, every breath is my daily spiritual practice. Every time I start a meeting, I actually start with a spiritual mind treatment. every time I end a meeting, I do a spiritual mind treatment, and I try and get out. The biggest thing right now is I'm on technology too much. So it's actually negatively impacting me. And I'm trying to figure out how to get more into nature, or I'm looking at different like frequency, like machines and stuff, because this is going to be an issue for the entire culture with technology. So how do we make sure that we're staying in the correct frequency that we need to stay in? So it's an ongoing, evolving daily spiritual practice for me, for sure.
Right. Oh yeah, for sure. For sure. Well, how can people find you out there on the interwebs?
Oh, well, I would love to connect with you guys. You can find me, of course, on social media as Dr. Erin. I have a podcast also. I don't interview people on my podcast. I might, like this next year. I do kind of different series, but I do an 11 to 22 minute I teach universal law and many different things, entrepreneurship and all kinds of spiritual stuff. So I'm Dr. Erin podcast on there. The book is Awakening, and you can find it under Erin Fall Haskell on Amazon and other platforms. And, we just connect. You can also go to soulciete.com, which is SOULCIETE.com. And we've got lots of gifts. It's just about engaging. I don't want to try and sell anybody. We don't do hard sells. It's really about having people engage. And if they fall in love with the work, then they fall in love with the work.
I love it. I love it. Well, Erin, thank you so much for doing the interview today. It's you just have such a brilliant world that you've built here, and I want everyone to go out and check it out. But yeah, so let's hopefully you come back. Hopefully we can do this again on season 2, and you can tell me what's new.
To read your book, and I actually really want you to bring your science data and all that into the community, if you would. I'd love to have you bring some up, because we're all about it, and we're developing the ministers, and a lot of it, it's really important for them to understand the scientific backing of all of it as well.
Absolutely.
Research to be done. I would be so honored to collaborate with that.
We will definitely be talking about that for sure. Well, yeah, Erin, you have a good day. Okay.
Thank you so much.
We'll talk soon.
There you have it, my interview with Dr. Erin. I hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to check out all her exciting content and things she has coming up. I'll see you next week on Quest. Thank you for listening to Quest. Please be sure and rate and review this podcast. This podcast is copyright. Any previously trademarked or copyright content is used by permission. Be sure to visit the official website for the International Association of Metatomics at metatomics.org, or find us on social media for other unique content. And make sure to pick up a copy of the book that started a spiritual revolution, Metatomics, The Grand Design, available for sale online and at most major bookstores. Thanks for listening.